We went to City Hall in St. John, which is in our uptown area of the city. And it's also located right next to a really busy bus stop. So there was quite a bit of traffic that was going through. So it was a great place to target. We had quite a few tenants come out. The weather was pretty crappy that day, so that kept people home, but we're hoping to do another one with a bigger turnout. So yeah, there was a lot of people, and it was nice to see people bring out their kids. So to see the next generation of change makers out there using their voices as children and youth was really inspiring too.
So what was the motive of the rally? Like what your organization wanted to achieve through this rally?
Yeah, so ACORN we've been speaking with tenants who have been living, a lot of them are in Canada Homes for Rent Buildings, which is a property management company in St. John. And they've been living in really deplorable conditions with rats, drafty windows, mold, soot coming in from heaters into their units, causing health problems. We've also seen big mold infestations. So really what it boils down to is a lack of health and safety within these buildings, and a lack of response from landlords and property management companies to address the issues that tenants are dealing with in the buildings. So we organized tenants who had been affected by the issues, and we went out and we demanded for action to be taken on making sure that people have healthy and safe homes, because affordability is really important, but affordability without health and safety standards really means nothing, because your health is still at risk. So that's what we were calling for, is the improvement of minimum property standard bylaws in the city, enhancement of protections in the Residential Tenancies Act regarding health and safety. And also we would like to see either a registry or landlord licensing be implemented in the municipality of St. John, which would help make sure that we have proactive inspections on these buildings so that people aren't getting away with profiting so much money off of buildings that are truly putting tenants at risk.
Right. Anything about the rent cap? Like, have you heard anything about the rent cap going to be extended next year, or what's the situation right now?
No, we have not heard anything about the rent cap being extended. We haven't been given a firm response on that. They, when Minister Wilson was the Minister of Service New Brunswick, obviously that's recently changed to be Minister Green. She had said, you know, it's not off the table, but we're not looking to do that because they've said that it hurts development, which we have not seen evidence to support that. Yeah, so no, we haven't heard a firm commitment on that. And obviously that is very important because we are already hearing from tenants who have been served rent increases that are going to come into effect in the new year.
The government made a new announcement yesterday in St. John about, you know, funding new housing units. Do you think these will address the issues that ACORN have been, you know, raising?
Well, we welcome additional funding into public housing. However, so in St. John, the funding for new units, there's only going to be 40 new units out of that funding pool in our city. And we have over 1,000 people who are on the wait list for public housing. So it's really a drop in the bucket in terms of the impact that it's going to make. The renovation of existing units is we are happy to see that, but again, we need to see that even more widespread, because a lot of the tenants that we do speak with are living in public housing that is government owned and run, and their housing conditions are actually some of the worst conditions of tenants in terms of health and safety issues. And tenants who are living in public housing that is owned by the government are not protected under the Residential Tenancies Act, and they don't have a place to go to file complaints. And their leases are, for lack of a better word, very predatory, because tenants can be evicted at any time. So yes, it's great to see more public housing units, but on the other hand, we need to see these tenants who are in these units have the same amount of rights as people who are in market rental housing. Otherwise, we have a two-tiered system where people are not going to have their rights fulfilled. So, and although the government is supposed to follow the Residential Tenancies Act in terms of health and safety issues, that's not happening. These units are in some of the worst conditions that we've seen. So it's pretty disturbing, and we need to have enforceable mechanisms for tenants to file complaints and to be heard. And right now that's not happening, especially for public housing tenants.
You say tenants are not protected under the Tenancies Act. Why, and what should be done so that they can be protected under the Act?
Yeah, so public housing tenants, they're not protected under the Residential Tenancies Act, and specifically public housing tenants that live in units that are owned by the government. So not units that are subsidized by the government, people who rent from a private landlord but receive a subsidy. We've just recently found out that they are supposed to be covered by the Residential Tenancies Act, but a lot of them have faced pushback when they go to the tribunal, where they've been told, no, we can't help you here because you're in public housing.
Right.
So they need help, and they need to see their rights met and to have mechanisms to be able to fight for their rights. But for tenants who live in public housing that is owned and operated by the government, they are not covered under the Residential Tenancies Act in terms of being able to go to the RTT to file a complaint. So although the government is supposed to be following the Residential Tenancies Act, they aren't. And there's no recourse mechanism for these tenants aside from going to court. And what tenant in public housing has the means to go to court? I live in market rental housing. I couldn't pay to take my landlord to court. So, and when we consider the income disparities, it's really disturbing. So why? I'm not sure why they would have written the act in that way. It does create a two-tiered rights system where those who have less income are being really discriminated against, and those who can afford market rental housing have more rights for the lack of rights that we do have in New Brunswick in terms of tenants. So we really do need to see all tenants included under the Residential Tenancies Act, and we need them to be able to go to the RTT and have more enforcement mechanisms for the RTT to make sure that landlords and government is complying with health and safety standards in these buildings.
Are they going to change the rule so that they'll come under the protection, or the government is not going to do anything about that?
We're not sure at this point. Where there has been no communication that there's an intention to include them in the act in terms of allowing them to file complaints with the RTT and having those protections. So there's really been nothing communicated about that yet. So yeah.
You said only 40 units are going to be built in St. John.
Yes. So
1,000 are in the waiting list. So how many units are needed in St. John?
I know, I can't remember the exact number. I think it's over 1,200 people in St. John are on the public housing wait list. So that's 1,200 people or more than 1,200 people who need public housing. So when we think about and this is the other thing, is this is over 4 years. So that wait list is likely to grow, especially if we do not have rent control and protections for tenants in their housing. Right. So really this is a very small amount of units that it's going to address. There is federal funding that's coming to the province too, so that's encouraging to see. But how many of those units will be in St. John and dispersed throughout the province? They haven't really given details as to exactly where they're going to go. So
okay, last question. Do you see housing crisis going to be resolved in the near future, or this is going to be dragged on for a few years?
Oh, if nothing's, this is going, because this is a multi-level government response. And honestly, we have not seen really strong action on this portfolio that's going to make the crisis go away. So until all three levels of government, like municipal governments, need to be included within this discussion. And they have responsibilities. They approve zoning, rezoning of land, they
Right.
approve development activity. They are a critical part of this role. And if they're not asking questions about affordability,
Mhm.
or they're not enforcing affordability standards in buildings, then it's just going to get worse and worse, right? So
Right.
yeah, it's a multi-level government response, and without really strong action, it's not going to get better. Yeah.